Welcome back to Treasure Hunting America. Our next treasure hunter has researched and hunted California's gold and U.S. military history and come up with some great finds, including artifacts relating to General Ulysses Grant.
Metal detecting, treasure hunting is something that's in your blood, and I think you're born with it. I really do. I certainly was. I can't remember a time when I wasn't into that, and I'm a geologist, and my parents would have told that I was going to be a geologist, because they tell me that when I was crawling, before I was walking, I'd come home with hands full of rocks. Aha! When I got my first metal detector, that's when the passion really grew. That's when I realized that there were things in the ground you couldn't see that were valuable. The Lake Michigan area was incredible, and I lived in a place called Lincolnshire, Illinois, which is right close to Waukegan. This was back in the mid-60s. Coinage had just gone to clad, so everything in the ground was silver. In an afternoon, you could pick up more coins than you could carry away. It was intriguing what you could find and not know was ever there. That was the primary thing that kept me going. I used to find an awful lot of money and a lot of gold jewelry too, which kind of supplemented my income in the early years. This is a handful of gold nuggets, 7 ounces to be actually 7.01 ounces, which I found last June, at a place called Gaines Creek, Alaska. Just after landing at Gaines Creek, we ate lunch and went out, and 3 hours later, I had this nugget. A couple hours after that, I had another nugget, and the next day I had a couple more nuggets. On the third day, I found that nugget, which is 3 3/4 ounces. It's a kind of a heart-shaped gold slug. There's no quartz in it whatsoever, and it's just a beauty. Near the end of the week, I found this, and it is gold in oxidized arsenopyrite, so the geologist up there told me. And they hadn't seen one of these before, this combination, gold in this parent rock. So they're now looking for that outcrop.
Through his years of experience as a treasure hunter, Mike has learned some good lessons on where to find the best targets.
I like parks and schools because you find lots of coins, just lots of coins. And in parks you can find some old coins and jewelry as well. There's plenty left behind. Even if an area's been hit hard, they didn't get everything. I like old trails, old mining trails. I like the beach too, especially an area where you might have had multiple shipwrecks. All kinds of things wash up on the beach during a storm or are uncovered by the cuts made in the sand by the storm. Gold fields. Especially around here. Redding was the end of the railroad back in the old days, coming up from the south. And the people would get off the train here in Redding and they'd go to Old Shasta, which was the county seat back in the 1800s, and they'd go off into the Trinities from there and any of the gold fields right around the area here. But this is basically where the beginning was. This is probably aluminum, but I'm going to dig it anyway. Must have come out. Oh, they did. It's the ring from a pull tab. Sound good. No, that's why. Another pull tab. It's a 2 pull tab day, but you know, not every day is a winner. These could just as easily have been seeded Liberty dimes or Wheatie pennies or a gold coin. You know, the stuff's in the ground and along with a lot of junk. So you'll be digging a lot of junk. This is a military belt plate, which I found on the coast. I found it under a burnt building in an old town, and after doing research on it, found out that it came from where General Grant had camped with his troops back in the 1850s. And they stayed there for quite some time. It was a staging area for the gold rush. And I would imagine that this belt plate belonged to one of Grant's troops. This is a U.S. military officer's button, which was made in somewhere between 1821 and 1854. It's still got the silver on it. I found this in the gold fields, not far from here, up in the hills, in the Trinities, near an area where the troops were sent in to protect the miners from the Indians back in the gold rush era. One of the secrets that people should know about are boulevards in any town, and that's the area between the sidewalk and the street, maintained by the city. It's usually got grass. You got to remember that even in the horse and buggy days, they parked them right there. They had curbs there. People have been getting in and out of their cars and buggies and so on those streets for 100 years. So you can imagine what's in the ground there. You want to be really careful because it's also considered part of a person's front yard. So you don't want to dig and leave holes or make a mess. But those boulevards are really a good secret. These silver coins, they don't look silver now because of the tarnish from the salt water. But I've got two seated half dollars here, 1858 and 1859. Below that are two half dimes, and they're 1853 and 1854. They're all S coins, minted in San Francisco, and who knows what ship they were on when it lost its cargo, and these included. But it was probably coming from San Francisco. When you walk across a piece of ground, you have no idea what the history of that ground was. You can't see on the ground, for the most part, you can't see what has happened there in the past. With a metal detector, you can cross a piece of property and basically garner the history of that property. This is a little coin that I found out in the middle of a farmer's field. It was a pea field. It's the best find that I found in England. It's a handmade Celtic Iceni gold quarter stater. And it depicts a long-legged wolf with a bristled back and gaping jaws on the front and a wild boar on the back. This coin has never been seen before. It's valued at about $10,000. I donated it to the Castle Museum in Norwich. If you're really serious about metal detecting and you want to find good old artifacts and coins, is to do some research. Go to the library, go to the Historical Society, talk to the old-timers, especially old-timers from the area. They can tell you where they used to have the 4th of July celebrations, the church picnics. Areas like that could be fields today are very promising because people overlook them. The best tip for a metal detector, especially if you're just getting started in the field, is to buy a good metal detector. Don't buy a low-line metal detector and expect it to do the job of a mid-line or upper-line metal detector. You don't have to buy the best, just don't buy the cheapest. Get something that's got some bells and whistles so that it can at least eliminate iron, tell you what you're looking at in the ground, and make a reasonable guess as to whether you want to dig it or not. England seems to be the place that has the most promise for finding what I'd really like to find, and that's a buried hoard, a few hundred or a few thousand coins from any era. And every time I'm in England, I don't pass up any large signal, and I dig them all up, even though it takes hours to get to some of these things, and they're usually a plowshare or a brass riveted piece of iron from centuries ago. I've never found a hoard, and that's really, my goal is to find one.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Treasure Hunting America. Be with us next time as we explore more stories of everyday treasure hunters across the country. Until then, I'm Mark Hendricks. Happy hunting!